A millionaire CEO accidentally bumps into a clumsy young country girl. A few days later, she leaves him crazy and confused. Before we start the story, comment below which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Alyssa Collins was far from home in a city that looked like it was straight out of a movie. Everything in Lakeview was elegant and intimidating, exactly the opposite of her small hometown. Willow Springs. Holding a package tightly, Alyssa took a deep breath. Just deliver it and leave, she told herself as she entered the towering Phillips Enterprises building. Mesmerized, Alyssa was in the lobby when she was distracted. She didn't notice the man coming toward her. It was Noah Phillips, the company's CEO. Walking down the stairs with his eyes glued to his phone. He was tall, confident, used to being in control. He didn't expect to be stopped, or rather knocked into. Alyssa tripped on the carpet, lost her balance. The box flew out of her hands. She crashed into Noah, spilling the coffee he was holding all over his perfect suit. The sound of the cup hitting the floor and the collision made everyone in the lobby turn. Alyssa tripped on the carpet, lost her balance. The box flew out of her hands. She crashed into Noah, spilling the coffee he was holding all over his clean suit. The sound of the cup hitting the floor and the collision made everyone in the lobby turn around. "Oh my God. I'm so sorry," Alyssa blurted out, panicking as she tried to wipe his suit with her sleeve. "I didn't see you there. It was an accident. I swear." Noah glanced down at the coffee dripping onto his tie. Then at the young woman in front of him. "An accident? You think that's an excuse?" His voice was firm but not loud, as though he was trying to hold back his anger. Alyssa gulped. He was intimidating. Instead of retreating, she shot back. "Well, if the carpet wasn't so slippery and people weren't walking everywhere, maybe this wouldn't have happened." Her response. Noah was taken aback by her direct response. He wasn't used to such direct comments. "It's the carpet's fault," she exclaimed. "I'm just here to deliver this," Alyssa said, holding the box up. "I'm not angry with you," Noah replied, his voice low and laced with sarcasm. "Look, I'm not going to cause any more problems. I'm just here to deliver this. If you want to fire me, go ahead. I don't even work here." The contrast between her awkward presence and the polished environment was almost comical. Noah shook his head, took the box from her hands, sighed. "Fine. Now leave without causing any more damage. Can you manage that?" Alyssa bit. Her lip trembled as she struggled to respond. She nodded and stepped back. "All right. Sorry again," she said as she hurried away. Noah watched, intrigued. It wasn't common for someone to talk to him like that, especially someone so out of place in his corporate world. She was, without a doubt, different. Outside the building, Alyssa leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. "What a disaster," she muttered, her face still burning with embarrassment. On her way home, she couldn't stop thinking about the man in the suit. He was rude. There was something about him that reminded her of how. "How did it go?" Alyssa asked, trying to sound casual. "It was fine," Alyssa replied, trying to sound casual. "The scene of spilling. Well, if the carpet wasn't so slippery and people weren't walking everywhere, maybe this wouldn't have happened," Alyssa said, trying to sound casual. Different. Their worlds were different. How she didn't belong in his. What she didn't know was that Noah wouldn't forget their encounter anytime soon either. Back in Willow Springs, Alyssa parked her old truck in front of her grandmother's small store. Still trying to shake off the disastrous delivery trip to Lakeview, she hurried inside, hoping to hide behind the counter before anyone could ask about it. "Alyssa, how did it go?" her grandmother asked enthusiastically while arranging jars of jam on the shelf. "It was fine," Alyssa replied, trying to sound casual. "The scene of spilling." His voice was firm but not loud, as though he was trying to hold back his anger. Alyssa gulped. He was intimidating. Instead of retreating, she shot back. "Well, if the carpet wasn't so slippery and people weren't walking everywhere, maybe this wouldn't have happened." Her response. Coffee on the CEO wouldn't leave her mind. She took a deep breath and forced a smile. The package was delivered. That's what matters. Her grandmother narrowed her eyes, sensing the hesitation in Alyssa's voice. "You didn't get into one of your messes, did you?" "Not exactly. I just spilled some coffee on the way to their boss," Alyssa admitted, grimacing as she spoke. Her grandmother just laughed and shook her head. "Well, at least you made an impression, didn't you?" Meanwhile, miles away, Noah Phillips was in his penthouse office in Lakeview, trying to focus on the contract spread across his desk. His desk. He couldn't stop thinking about Alyssa. There was something about her that was impossible to ignore. He knew he should stop thinking about her and focus on work. His company was about to expand. He needed to focus on that. Among the many tasks on his plate, Noah was reviewing the land acquisition project in Willow Springs, a venture his team deemed promising. The goal was to build a distribution center that would connect rural areas to urban markets. Achieving that meant purchasing properties from small-scale farmers. Noah made a note on his tablet and called his assistant, Blake. Blake was a pragmatic man who always got straight to the point. "Blake, what's the status of the negotiations in Willow Springs?" "We're making progress. Most of the landowners seem willing to sell. There's some resistance. It's a small town. People have deep ties to their land. Then head down there and figure out how to resolve this. I want the deal closed as soon as possible," Noah ordered, snapping his tablet shut to end the conversation. Meanwhile, Alyssa was trying to go about her daily routine. She couldn't stop thinking about Noah. It wasn't because of how he treated her. Because of what he stood for, the big city. The sophistication. The total control over everything. It felt completely different from her world. Willow Springs was her home. Deep down, Alyssa knew she wanted more. She craved something different. Something she couldn't quite define. Days went by. Alyssa felt a sense of alienation from her hometown of Willow Springs. She longed for something more. Even though life in Willow Springs seemed to return to normal. Alyssa helped at the general store. Chatted with neighbors. Made deliveries around town. However, the peace was disrupted when trucks bearing corporate logos began appearing in the area. The townspeople grew uneasy. Rumors circulated about a major company interested in purchasing land in the region. In buying land in the region, for many, this meant they might lose their properties, as well as the heart of the community they had built over generations. One late afternoon, as Alyssa was closing the store, Blake walked in carrying a folder of documents that he was straightforward and looked completely out of place in his. Alyssa was closing the store one late afternoon when Blake walked in. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He looked completely out of place in the rustic setting of the shop. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm looking for the landowners in this area. I work for Phillips Enterprises. We're interested in acquiring property here. Could you tell me who I should speak with?" Alyssa froze for a moment. "Phillips Enterprises," she repeated. She felt a rush of excitement, her heart raced that it couldn't be, yes. "We're assessing properties for an expansion project. Do you know the owners of the surrounding lands?" Alyssa pointed to the bulletin board by the door. It had a map of the town and the names and contact information of various residents. "You can start here," she said defensively. Blake thanked her politely and left, leaving Alyssa with a flood of questions. Phillips Enterprises. The same company Noah worked for. What did they want with Willow Springs, and why did it leave her feelings so unsettled that evening, as she helped her grandmother prepare dinner? Alyssa couldn't shake the thoughts from her mind. "Grandma, have you heard anything about companies buying land around here?" she asked casually. "Yes. I have. That I heard about it at the market today. They say it's a big corporation. We don't know yet what they plan to build." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Alyssa lied, trying to mask her concern. Meanwhile, Blake was reporting the initial findings to Noah. "The town is more resistant than we expected. That it won't be easy to convince everyone to sell. Many families have been there for generations." "Offer whatever it takes," Noah said, his tone unyielding. "That I want this resolved quickly." But as he ended the call, Noah hesitated. He knew Willow Springs was very important to the company's growth. Alyssa felt a little uneasy. Maybe it was because he kept thinking about Alyssa. How honest and simple she was. He shook his head, annoyed with himself. Emotions had no place in business. As the trucks from Phillips Enterprises continued driving around, Alyssa felt a sense of foreboding. She sensed that something significant was on the horizon. Her stomach fluttered with unease. That morning, while organizing boxes at the general store, she overheard two customers talking about buying up the land. "They say they want to buy up the land." "Yes. We're assessing properties for an expansion project." "Do you know the owners of the surrounding lands?" Alyssa pointed to the bulletin board by the door, where a map of the town displayed names and contact details of various residents. "You can start here." Willow Springs rumors became the town's hottest topic. Alyssa. It meant only one thing: her path was about to cross with Noah's again. This time, she knew it wouldn't be simple. The sun shone brightly over Willow Springs as the trucks from Phillips Enterprises moved through town with increasing frequency. The residents, suspicious, watched the men in suits, who looked so out of place on the dusty streets lined with modest homes. Alyssa sensed that something big was coming. For some reason, it made her stomach churn. That morning, while organizing boxes at the general store, she overheard two customers talking. "They say they want to buy up the land around the town." Alyssa felt a growing sense of unease. "All the land in the eastern area, Mr. Benson, the owner of one of the largest farms nearby, explained. They're offering good money. It'll ruin our town. And who's to say they'll keep their promises?" "Exactly. It's always good for them. Never for us." Mrs. Parker turned to Alyssa. "Your grandmother hasn't mentioned selling them." Alyssa pointed to the bulletin board by the door, where a map of the town displayed names and contact information for various residents. "You can start here." "The store's land has she not?" "Not that I know of," Alyssa replied, feeling a growing knot in her chest. If Phillips Enterprises really was trying to take over the land, it would change everything. What bothered her most was the name behind it all, Noah Phillips. Knowing he was directly involved only made the situation more complicated. As she tried to focus on her work, another truck pulled up outside the store. This time it wasn't Blake or any other assistant. It was Noah. He stepped out of the vehicle like he was walking onto foreign soil. His expensive shoes sinking slightly into the dusty street. The townspeople paused their activities, watching him. Her eyes locked on his. She froze. "Alyssa Collins," he said, as though confirming a suspicion. His voice was calm but authoritative. She blinked a few times, trying to process what was happening. "Noah Phillips," she replied, crossing her arms. "What brings you to Willow Springs?" "Missing the coffee." Her heart raced. It couldn't be. "Yes. We're assessing properties for an expansion project. Do you know the owners of the surrounding lands?" Alyssa pointed to the bulletin board by the door, where a map of the town displayed names and contact details of various residents. "You can start here." With curious and distrustful eyes, she saw the man in the tailored suit and serious expression. He seemed completely out of place amid the simplicity of Willow Springs. Alyssa saw Noah through the store's window and felt her heart race. She silently prayed he was there for any reason that didn't involve her. When he walked into, her mind was racing. Her heart was pounding. "We're assessing properties for an expansion project. Do you know the owners of the surrounding lands?" Alyssa asked. She pointed to the bulletin board by the door. The bulletin board displayed a map of the town. The map had names and contact details of various residents. "You can start here," Alyssa said. His eyes locked onto hers immediately. She froze. "Alyssa Collins," he said, as though confirming a suspicion. His voice was calm but carried an air of authority. She blinked a few times, trying to process what was happening. "Noah Phillips," she replied, crossing her arms. "What brings you to Willow Springs?" "Missing the coffee." Noah's mouth twitched into a slight smile. He quickly returned to his serious expression. "I'm here on business. It seems our operations involve this town." Alyssa narrowed her eyes and tilted her head slightly. "Operations? You mean buying up everyone's land and turning it into some corporate project?" "Something like that," he admitted without hesitation. "I'm here to make sure it's done the right way." "Oh. Of course. Destroying people's livelihoods politely makes it so much better." She shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Noah took a deep breath, clearly accustomed to handling tough negotiations. Not to dealing with someone Alyssa didn't come here to argue. She came to understand what we're up against. "Well, if you really want to understand, maybe you should start by talking to the people here instead of just sending your men to throw money around," Alyssa replied, walking over to the counter. "You can't buy everything. Some things are worth more than money." Her words hung in the air for a moment. Noah watched her, noticing the passion in her voice. Alyssa wasn't just clumsy or awkward, she had a strength he hadn't seen before. "Maybe you can show me," he said. Unexpectedly, Alyssa blinked, confused. "Show you what? Why this land is so important to you?" "I want to see Willow Springs through your eyes," he answered, his tone serious and surprising Alyssa. She hesitated. The idea of spending a day with Noah Phillips seemed as absurd as it was intriguing. If you wanted to understand, this might be her chance to show him that Willow Springs was more than just land on a map. "All right," she finally said. "I'll warn you now, don't expect anything that matches your soup." Alyssa took Noah on an impromptu tour of the town. They started at the town square. Where children played near the fountain and elders chatted under the trees, every corner seemed to have a story. She brought him to the Benson farm. Where? Mr. Benson explained that his family had worked that land for 3 generations. Let's play a game. For those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who make it this far will understand now. Let's continue the story. Noah listened attentively. It was hard for him to silence the. He thought logically. He understood the emotional value of the land. He also saw its potential for business. Alyssa, however, was determined to show him what money couldn't buy. By the end of the day, she brought him to one of the highest points in town, where the views stretched across fields that seemed to go on forever. Forever, this is it, she said. Gesturing broadly, this is Willow Springs. It's not just land or buildings. It's people's homes. It's where they raise their families and build their dreams. Can you really look at this and think it's worth destroying? Noah was silent for a moment. Taking in the view. I understand what you're saying. I also have responsibilities. I can't ignore the opportunities this offers. Alyssa shook her head. Frustrated. You can pretend to understand. Deep down, you're just another CEO trying to pad your bank account. Her words hit harder than he cared to admit. Noah knew she wasn't entirely wrong. He had spent his life putting business was the most important thing to him. For the first time, he started to wonder if that was enough. When they returned to the general store, Alyssa's grandmother was waiting on the porch with a curious smile. I didn't know you'd made a new friend. Alyssa, she said as Noah stepped out of the truck. He's not my friend, Alyssa quickly replied. Crossing her arms. Not yet, Noah said, throwing her a look that made her roll her eyes. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little corner of the world, her grandmother said, extending her hand to Noah. He shook it, surprised by her genuine kindness. It's a special place, he admitted, giving Alyssa one last glance before leaving. As Noah drove away, Alyssa wasn't sure how she felt. Part of her was relieved he was gone. Another part couldn't ignore the fact that he seemed different, and somehow she knew this wouldn't be the end of her interactions with Noah Phillips. A few weeks had passed since Noah's last visit to Willow Springs. His presence was. The townspeople still talked about it. Alyssa tried to stop thinking about him. She tried to stay busy at the general store and helping her grandmother with daily chores, but the rumors about Phillips Company's plans to buy land continued to grow. This increased the tension in the community. On a cloudy morning, Alyssa saw Noah's black truck arrive in town again. He got out with his usual confident attitude. This time he seemed less cold. It was as though something was weighing on him. Alyssa felt her stomach twist with anger and something else she couldn't define. She dropped what she was doing. Springs through your eyes, he answered, his tone serious, catching Alyssa off guard. She hesitated. The idea of spending a day with Noah Phillips seemed as absurd as it was intriguing. If you wanted to understand, this might be her chance to show him that Willow Springs was more than just a place on a map. All was doing and walked out of the store, determined to confront him. Noah Phillips, she called out, her voice firm and full of determination. He stopped and turned, meeting Alyssa's challenging gaze. Good morning, Alyssa, he said, trying to maintain his composure. You're back. What do you want now? Haven't you caused enough trouble here? Alyssa crossed her arms and stared at him. I'm here to understand the situation better, Noah replied in a neutral tone. I want to see how we can move forward without causing so many problems. Move forward? Seriously? Alyssa snapped, irritated. You don't understand anything about this town. You think you can just decide what's best for us? you're just another greedy CEO who only sees numbers and contracts. Noah pressed his lips together, taking a deep breath to control his frustration. Alyssa. This isn't personal. I'm just trying to do my job, your job. She stepped closer to him. Your job is destroying everything that means something to these people. To you. It's just land. To us. It's homes. Stories. Memories. How can that not be personal? Her words hit him like a punch. Noah knew she wasn't entirely wrong. He also couldn't ignore the responsibilities weighing on him. It's not as simple as you think, he said in a calmer tone. There are people depending on me to make. This project is important. That doesn't mean I don't care. Caring isn't enough, Alyssa countered, her eyes shining with determination. That you're not seeing what truly matters here. Noah stood in silence, letting her words sink in. For the first time, he began to question whether his decisions were truly the right ones. Alyssa had a passion that Noah couldn't ignore. It left him conflicted. As Alyssa and Noah argued, the sky, already heavy with clouds, darkened even more. The wind picked up. Soon the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town, already swollen from days of rain, started to overflow rapidly. Shouts came from Alyssa and Noah were in an argument. At the same time, it started to rain. The sky was already dark with clouds. The wind picked up. Soon, the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town was already swollen from days of rain. It started to overflow rapidly. Shouts came from the other side of the square, drawing everyone's attention. The river is overflowing, someone yelled. Water began flooding the streets, carrying debris and threatening the closest homes. Without a second thought, Alyssa ran toward the chaos. Noah followed, alarmed by how quickly the situation was escalating. The townspeople began to gather, trying to save what they could and protect their homes. Alyssa. What are you doing? Noah shouted as he saw her hauling sandbags to redirect the water flooding the street. She shot back without looking at him, without hesitation. Noah removed his jacket and started helping, though he was clearly not used to this kind of physical effort. He followed Alyssa's and the residents' instructions, creating barriers to contain the water even amidst the chaos. Alyssa noticed that Noah was determined, which was unexpected. However, the situation worsened. A strong current swept away a passion he couldn't ignore left him conflicted. As Alyssa and Noah argued, the sky darkened. The wind picked up. Soon the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town was already swollen from days of rain and started to overflow rapidly. Shouts came from the pile of sandbags. Alyssa rushed to put them back in place. Noah realized too late that she was heading toward a dangerous area where the ground had become unstable from the force of the water. Alyssa. Watch out, he shouted. She had already slipped. Alyssa fell into the rushing water, which quickly pulled her toward a deeper section. Without thinking, Noah ran after her. He fought against the current. He reached her and grabbed her arm firmly. He pulled her closer to him. Hold on tight, he said, struggling to keep his footing. With great effort, he managed to drag her to the bank, where they both collapsed onto the ground. Exhausted, and Alyssa was soaked. She looked at Noah, panting, relieved. You saved me. I wasn't going to let you get swept away, she said. Noah, still catching his breath, replied. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. Thank you, she said sincerely, though her voice carried a hint of disbelief. Noah Phillips. The man Noah was passionate about saving Alyssa, even though he was unsure about the reasons why. As Alyssa and Noah argued, the sky became even more full of clouds. The wind picked up. Soon, the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town was already swollen from days of rain and started to overflow rapidly. Noah had risked everything to save her, even though he had thought her to be cold and greedy. "It was nothing," he said, looking away. But deep down, I knew there was more to my actions than simple concern. As the hours passed, the rain subsided. The townspeople managed to bring the situation under control. Despite the damage, no one was seriously injured. Alyssa and Noah were in conflict. The sky was darkening. The wind picked up. The creek that ran through the town, already swollen from days of rain, started to overflow rapidly. Shouts came from the community. Noah was sitting on the steps of the general store. His clothes were still damp when Alyssa approached. She sat down beside him. She was still processing the day's events. "You're not who I thought you were," she said, breaking the silence. "And who did you think I was?" Noah asked. Alyssa and Noah were in conflict. As they argued, the sky became even more cloudy. The wind picked up. Soon, the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town was already swollen from days of rain and started to overflow rapidly. Alyssa admitted to Noah, who looked at her like another arrogant, heartless CEO. "Today, you proved you're more than that." Noah gave a small, lopsided smile that didn't respond right away. "You, Alyssa, are more than just a stubborn girl trying to save her town." They shared a brief but meaningful smile. Despite their differences, Alyssa and Noah were in a difficult situation. They were arguing about something. The sky was getting darker. The wind picked up. Then it started to rain. The creek that flowed through the town was already full from days of rain. It started to overflow. People were shouting. Alyssa and Noah were worried. The days after the flood were filled with rebuilding efforts in Willow Springs. The residents worked together to repair the damage caused by the flood. Alyssa was at the heart of it all, helping wherever she could. Noah remained in town instead of returning to Lakeview, which made some people curious and others admiring. Alyssa was also confused. Since the moment Noah saved her, something had shifted between them. She couldn't explain it. There was a connection she could no longer ignore. Richard, her childhood friend and longtime admirer, had noticed how close they were getting. Richard was in his family's workshop hammering a piece of wood when he saw Noah crossing the square. Noah was heading toward Alyssa's store. Richard narrowed his eyes and gripped the hammer tightly, determined. He set his tools aside and followed him. At the store, Alyssa was organizing supply boxes when Richard walked in, his expression carrying something she couldn't quite identify at first. "Richard, is something wrong?" she asked. Stopping what she was doing. "You should be the one answering that." He replied, crossing his arms. "Why is that guy still here? He has nothing to do with our town." Alyssa sighed, realizing where this was going. She realized where this conversation was headed. "He's helping. Anyway, what does it have to do with you?" "Everything, Alyssa," Richard said, his tone a mix of frustration and insecurity. "You know what he represents. He's the kind of person who takes advantage of others and leaves without looking back. What if he's not? Alyssa shot back. Surprising. The conversation was about to take a turn. He's helping. Anyway. What does it have to do with you? Everything. Alyssa. Richard's tone revealed a mix of frustration and insecurity. You know what he represents. He's the kind of person who takes advantage of others and leaves without looking back. What if he's not? Alyssa shot back. Surprised even herself with her defense. You didn't see what he did during the flood. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to risk anything. He did. Richard shook his head. Disbelief evident on his face. Do you really think he cares about Willow Springs or about you? He's different. Alyssa. He doesn't understand what it means to be from here and live like this, you know that. She swallowed hard. Recognizing that Richard was trying to protect her. She couldn't ignore the frustration bubbling inside her at how much he was assuming. Maybe he understands more than you think, and either way. That's my decision. Not yours. Richard fell silent. His eyes locked on hers. Finally. He sighed and looked away. That I just don't want to see you get hurt. Alyssa, that's all I know. She replied. Her tone softer now. You need to trust me. Meanwhile. Noah was sitting in a small town cafe. Trying to make sense of everything he was feeling, that he didn't understand why Alyssa's opinion mattered so much to him, or why he couldn't stop thinking about her. For years. His life had been defined by clear goals and concrete results. Now. Everything felt more uncertain. That he glanced out the window and saw Alyssa leaving the store with Richard following close behind. His expression was serious. Almost protective. Noah felt a tightening in his chest. Recognizing it as jealousy. Though he didn't want to admit it, determined to act. Noah called out to Alyssa as she approached the cafe. Alyssa. Do you have a minute? She hesitated. Casting a quick glance at Richard. Who lingered a few steps away before nodding, Noah led her to. Alyssa felt her heart race as she listened to Richard's words. She didn't know how to respond. You didn't see what he did during the flood. Richard said. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to risk anything. He did. Richard shook his head. Disbelief evident on his face. Do you really think he cares about Willow Springs or about you? He asked. He's different. Alyssa. He doesn't understand what it means to be a part of this world. Richard paused. Gathering his thoughts. I'd like to invite you to an event in Lakeview. He began. Getting straight to the point. It's a charity gala on my company's hosted every year. I think it would be a good opportunity to show you how things work in my world. Alyssa stared at him. Surprised. You want me to go? She asked. To Lakeview with you? Why? Because I want you to see that not everything in my world is about profit and numbers. He replied. His voice sincere. That I want you to understand why some decisions have to be made. Maybe because I want to spend more time with you. Alyssa's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. Alyssa tried to deny it. She couldn't. There was something about Noah that drew her in. Even though she knew they came from different worlds. Before she could answer, Richard walked over. Interrupting the conversation. Can I talk to you in private? He asked. Noah looked at Richard but stayed quiet. Alyssa sighed and stood up. Following Richard to a more private place. That you're not going. He said before she could say anything. Excuse me. Alyssa raised an eyebrow. This event. This gala. Whatever it is. You're not going. That he's just using you, Alyssa. He doesn't care about you or Willow Springs. That it's all a game to him. And what makes you think you? He doesn't understand what I can tell him to do. Alyssa retorted. Her irritation growing. I know you. Alyssa. I've been here your whole life. While he just showed up and is already messing everything up. He'll leave. You'll be the one stuck dealing with the fallout. Alyssa took a deep breath, trying to keep her anger in check. Richard. Alyssa didn't expect him to be impressed by the big city lights. Noah smiled. Relieved. I'm not expecting anything. I just want you to see. Alyssa adjusted the dress her grandmother had helped her with. You didn't see what he did during the flood. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to risk anything. He did. Richard shook his head, disbelief evident on his face. Do you really think he cares about Willow Springs or about you? He's different. He doesn't understand what it's like to care about you. That doesn't give you the right to decide for me. I can take care of myself. Richard remained silent, clearly frustrated. He realized that pushing further would only make things worse. He shook his head and walked away, leaving Alyssa alone with her thoughts. She returned to where Noah was, sitting still, unsure of what to say. Finally, she took a deep breath and answered, I'll go. Just so we're clear. Don't expect me to be impressed by the bright lights of the big city. Noah smiled, relieved that I'm not expecting anything, Alyssa. I just want you to see. Alyssa adjusted the dress her grandmother had helped sew. Richard shook his head, disbelief evident on his face. Do you really think he cares about Willow Springs or about you? He's different. Alyssa. He doesn't understand what it means to be a part of the event. Glancing at her reflection in the mirror, she saw that her luxurious outfits didn't match the event's expectations. It was the best she had. Even so, she couldn't shake the nerves. Every part of her mind screamed that she didn't belong in that world. When Noah arrived to pick her up, he looked as handsome as always. He was wearing a well-fitted suit that made him look confident. When he saw her, he stopped for a second. You look beautiful, he said, smiling a little. Alyssa blushed and looked away. It's all I had, she replied. There was a hint of. The car ride to Lakeview was filled with occasional small talk. Silence lingered between them. Noah, used to having full control of every situation, realized that things were different with Alyssa. She wasn't easily impressed. That unsettled him in a way he wasn't accustomed to. When they arrived at the event hall, Alyssa looked beautiful. Alyssa was amazed. The car ride to Lakeview was filled with occasional small talk. Silence lingered between them. Noah, used to having full control of every situation, realized that things were different with Alyssa. She wasn't easily impressed. That unsettled him in a way he wasn't accustomed to. When they arrived at the event hall, Alyssa couldn't hide her awe. The venue was grand, filled with bright lights, elegant decorations. People dressed as if they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. There was no time to take it all in. People were already turning to look at her. An outsider in this world of glitz and wealth. Everyone staring. Alyssa whispered. Nervous. Let them stare. Noah replied, offering his arm. You're with me. Despite his words, Alyssa still felt out of place. While Noah greeted investors and business partners, she stood to the side, observing. The conversations around her were full of corporate jargon and stock. Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. The event hall was grand, filled with bright lights, elegant decorations. People dressed as if they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. There was no time to take it all in. People were already turning to look at her. An outsider in this world of glitz and wealth. Everyone staring. Alyssa whispered. Nervous. Let them stare. Noah replied. Offering his arm. You're with me. Despite his words, Alyssa still felt out of place. While Noah greeted investors and business partners, she stood to the side, observing. The conversations around her were full of corporate jargon and stock. Alyssa felt uneasy. She kept her composure. Noah sensed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, she lied. Trying to seem at ease. Just taking it all in. He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting them. Noah. What a pleasant surprise, she said. What are you doing here? Alyssa asked. I'm here with him, the woman replied, gesturing toward Noah. You're with him? Alyssa repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. Yes. We're working together. Noah replied. Market talk and other confusing things. Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, she lied. Trying to seem at ease. Just taking it all in. He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. Noah. What a pleasant surprise, she said. And who was your guest? Alyssa caught the unspoken tone in her question. Held her composure. Noah. Sensing the tension, responded calmly. This is Alyssa Collins from Willow Springs. She's a friend helping me with a project. Friend, the woman repeated, giving Alyssa a deliberate, market talk. Things that made no sense to her. Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. Are you okay? He asked. Yes. She lied. Trying to seem at ease. Just taking it all in. He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. Noah. What a pleasant surprise. She skyline. Feeling small. I knew I shouldn't have come. She muttered to herself. You're overthinking it. A familiar voice said. She turned to see Noah approaching. I'm not overthinking it. Alyssa replied, crossing her arms. It's obvious I don't belong here. I'm just a girl from the general store. These people know it. You don't have to belong anywhere. Noah said. His voice softer now. You are who you are. Alyssa. That's what I admire about you. She stared at him. Confused. Why did you bring me here? Noah. Honestly. It just feels like a reminder of how different our worlds are. I brought you here because I wanted to show you something different. He admitted, his eyes locked on hers. More than that. I wanted to be with you. His words caught her off guard before she could respond. One of the event organizers appeared, calling Noah for a presentation. He hesitated. Alyssa gestured for him to go. I'm fine, she said. Trying to sound convincing, Noah watched her for market talk. Things that made no sense to her. Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. Are you okay? He asked. Yes. She lied. Trying to seem at ease. Just taking it all in. He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. Noah. What a pleasant surprise. She. Another moment before heading back inside. As Alyssa tried to compose herself, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "So, this is what you want now?" It was Richard. "Richard, what are you doing here?" she asked, surprised and confused. "It's not hard to figure out where Noah Phillips will be. It's all over the papers," he replied. Crossing his arms. "I came because I thought you needed someone to remind you of who you really are." "Who I am," she repeated. Indignant. "And what makes you think I've forgotten that because you're here?" Alyssa Richard retorted, his tone rising. "In a place that has nothing to do with you, standing next to someone who will never understand what market talk and other confusing things." Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," she lied, trying to seem at ease. "Just taking it all in." He didn't believe her. Before he could say more, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. "What a pleasant surprise," Alyssa said, taking a deep breath, trying to control her anger. "You don't have the right to tell me what matters to me." "Richard, stop acting like you're my guardian. I just don't want to see you get hurt," he said, his voice quieter now. "Because I care about you." "I appreciate that," Alyssa replied, softening her tone. "Market talk and other confusing things." Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," she lied, trying to seem at ease. "Just taking it all in." He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. "Noah, what a pleasant surprise," she said. "But in the end, it's my life. You need to accept that." Richard stood in silence, his eyes filled with sadness. He knew she was right. He gave a brief nod before turning and walking away. Back inside the ballroom, Noah was on stage, finishing his speech about the company's projects. He looked out at the crowd. His mind was market talk and things that made no sense to her. Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," she lied, trying to seem at ease. "Just taking it all in." He didn't believe her. Before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. "Noah, what a pleasant surprise," she exclaimed. Elsewhere, rather on someone. When the applause began, he quickly thanked the audience and stepped down, heading straight to find Alyssa. She was standing in a corner, watching people dance, still trying to push away the thoughts Richard had planted in her mind. Noah approached her, stopping at her side. "Would you like to dance?" he asked. Noah asked, "Can I teach you to dance?" "I don't know how to dance like that," she replied, hesitantly. "Neither do I," he said, smiling. Alyssa hesitated. Then she placed her hand in his and let him guide her to the dance floor. The two of them began to dance slowly to the music. Noah kept his eyes on her the entire time. As they danced, Alyssa looked at Noah, trying to understand what had happened that evening. He wasn't just the CEO she had imagined. As they spent time together, it became harder to keep her emotional distance. Despite the gala showing how different they were, there was something in Noah's eyes that made Alyssa want to believe that maybe they could overcome their differences. Those who only read the comments. Here's a game. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. When the music ended, Noah guided her off the dance floor. They were both silent, as if trying to extend the moment. They didn't realize that. From another corner of the ballroom, curious eyes were watching them. Especially one in particular. The woman who had interacted with Noah earlier was clearly suspicious of what Alyssa might mean to him. "Do you want some fresh air?" Noah asked, breaking the silence. Alyssa simply nodded. They walked together to a balcony where the city lights glittered like artificial stars. Noah noticed her thoughtful expression and leaned slightly to look at her face. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Genuinely curious. "I'm thinking that maybe I judged you too quickly," she admitted, looking at him. "But at the same time, I don't know where this takes us." "Noah?" Noah was silent for a moment, thinking about what Alyssa had said. He knew that what he felt for her was real. He also knew that their lives were very different. "I don't know where this takes us either," he said. "All I know is that you make me want to find out." Alyssa smiled faintly. "But..." He thought for a moment, considering her words. He knew that what he felt for Alyssa wasn't something he could ignore. But he also knew their worlds were completely different. "Alyssa, I don't know where this takes us either. All I know is that you make me want to find out." She gave a faint smile. Before she could respond, the moment was interrupted by a waiter informing Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. He sighed, clearly reluctant. Alyssa gestured for him to go. "This is your world. Noah. Go." As Noah returned to the ballroom, Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony, savoring the brief. Before she could respond, the moment was interrupted by a waiter telling Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. He sighed, clearly reluctant. Alyssa gestured for him to go. "This is your world. Noah. Go." As Noah returned to the ballroom, Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony, enjoying the brief moment of silence. However, her peace was soon disrupted when the elegant woman from earlier appeared. Her forced smile barely concealed her curiosity. "You must be Alyssa," the woman said, without waiting for a response. "I'm Claire. I work closely with Noah on many projects." "Nice to meet you, Alyssa," she replied. Keeping her cool, something about Claire's tone made her uneasy. "That I couldn't help but notice how attentive he is to you," Claire continued, examining Alyssa. That's a bit unusual for him. Noah doesn't usually get distracted by this." Alyssa sensed the Noah return to the ballroom. Alyssa chose not to react. "Well, maybe he's trying something different," Claire said, laughing a little. "But be careful, dear. Noah's world is complicated. If you're not careful, you might end up more hurt than you realize." With those words, Claire walked away, leaving Alyssa with a knot in her stomach. Before she could answer, the waiter interrupted. He told Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. Noah sighed, clearly unhappy. Alyssa gestured for him to go. "This is your world. Noah. Go." Noah returned to the ballroom. Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony, enjoying the moment. As much as she hated to admit it, the woman's words upset her. The woman made her feel like she didn't belong in that place or in Noah's life. When Noah returned to find Alyssa, he noticed that her behavior had changed. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Yes." Before she could answer, the waiter interrupted. He told Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. Noah sighed, Clearly unhappy. Alyssa gestured for him to go. This is your world. Noah. Go. Noah returned to the ballroom. Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony. Enjoying the moment. She answered quickly, trying to hide her discomfort. Just thinking. Noah. Something's wrong. I don't want to bother you. Instead, he suggested it might be time to head back to Willow Springs. Alyssa agreed, relieved to leave the unfamiliar environment. The ride back was quiet. Before she could answer, a waiter interrupted. He told Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. Noah sighed, clearly unhappy. Alyssa gestured for him to go. This is your world. Noah. Go. Noah returned to the ballroom. Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony. Enjoying the brief moment. She stared out the window, lost in thought, while Noah occasionally glanced at her, wondering whether to ask what was on her mind. But he felt that Alyssa needed space. In the days that followed, Alyssa tried to return to her routine in Willow Springs. She couldn't stop thinking about the experience at the gala. Even though she felt unsure and worried, she couldn't stop thinking about Noah. But every time she thought about moving closer to him, she remembered what Claire's and Richard said. She stopped. At the same time, Noah was having his own thoughts. He realized that Alyssa had something that no one else did. Alyssa paused what she was doing and looked at him. Richard. I know you're worried about me. You don't need to remind me how different Noah and I are. I already know that. The moment was interrupted by a waiter informing Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. He sighed, clearly reluctant. Alyssa gestured for him to go. This is your world. Noah. Go. As Noah returned to the ballroom, Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony, savoring the brief moment. His life did. His life made him question his priorities. The first time in years. He felt like he wanted more than just professional success. He also knew that stepping into Alyssa's life meant confronting challenges he had never faced before. The situation grew more complicated when Richard appeared at the general store again. This time, his approach was gentler. His intentions were unchanged. So, how was the gala? He asked casually as Alyssa organized the shelves. It was interesting, she replied, keeping her response vague. Interesting. How interesting? Richard pressed. Interesting. Because you realized he has nothing in common with you. Interesting because you were impressed by all that grandeur. Alyssa paused. Then looked at Richard. Richard. I know you're worried about me. You don't need to remind me how different Noah and I are. I already know that. Then why keep going? Richard asked, sounding more serious. Why let someone into your life when you know it's only going to complicate things? Maybe I want to find out if it's worth it. Alyssa replied, her voice steady. That's something only I can decide. Richard sighed and shook his head. I just hope you know what you're getting yourself into. Later, Alyssa was putting boxes of fresh vegetables on the shelf at the entrance of the general store when Noah appeared. It was a sunny day in Willow Springs. He seemed more relaxed than usual. He was wearing jeans and a casual shirt, which made him look like he belonged in the small town. Here to supervise my box stacking skills? Alyssa asked with a teasing smile as she put another box on top of the pile. No. Now that you mention it. This looks a bit dangerous, Noah replied, crossing his arms and tilting his head to examine the precarious stack. Oh. Please, she said. Sounding proud. I've been doing this since I was old enough to carry a basket of fruit. The next moment, as she adjusted the top box, Alyssa slipped and sent half of the fruit falling to the ground. This is a bit dangerous, Noah replied, crossing his arms and tilting his head to examine the precarious stack of fruit. Oh. Please. I've been doing this since I was old enough to carry a basket of fruit, she said, her voice filled with pride. The next moment, as she adjusted the top box, Alyssa slipped and sent half the fruit tumbling to the ground. Noah stifled a laugh as Alyssa, her face red with embarrassment, scrambled to gather the scattered fruit. See? That's what I call advanced technique, he joked, crouching down to help her. You don't have to help me. I've got this, she muttered. Noah ignored her. Picking up an apple. Noah said. Of course you do. He handed her an apple, but imagine the scandal if the most famous general store in Willow Springs lost its reputation over bruised fruit, Alyssa laughed. She couldn't stay serious. Oh. Sure. That would be the end of the world. Once. He picked up an apple. Of course you do, he said, handing her an apple. But imagine the scandal if the most famous general store in Willow Springs lost its reputation over bruised fruit. Alyssa laughed. Oh. Sure. That would be the end of the world. Once the mess was cleaned up, Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. Initially hesitant, she eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back. He complained about the state of the vehicle. Alyssa laughed at his attempt to adjust to the stiff, uncomfortable seat. Does this thing even have suspension? He asked, gripping the dashboard to keep from being thrown around. Of course it does. It's just a little tired, Alyssa replied, laughing. It gets the job done. When they arrived at the farm, Noah seemed relieved to step out of the truck, but Alyssa, distracted, stepped into a muddy hole and nearly fell. Noah caught her just in time, though not before her boots sank deep into the muck. Great, Alyssa said, looking down at her mud-covered boot-covered foot. Just what I needed, holding back laughter. Noah replied. Maybe you should consider a plan for muddy days. Alyssa gave him a playful look, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Or maybe you should learn to handle normal people who don't live in glass towers. Later, back in town, Noah invited Alyssa to take a walk to a nearby lake. It was one of. Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. She was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. As they walked, Alyssa felt the connection between them grow. Noah was unlike anyone she had ever known. Yet at the same time, he seemed to fit into her life in a way she couldn't quite explain. When they reached the lakeshore, Noah turned to her, his expression more serious than usual. Alyssa, I need. Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. She was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back. He began. His voice calm but filled with intensity. She stayed silent. Waiting. Since we met. You've been different. You've made me see things I've never noticed before. You've made me question what really matters. Honestly. I've never felt this way about anyone. Alyssa's heart raced. She remained quiet. Unable to look away from him. Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. Alyssa was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. "I think I'm in love with you," Alyssa said. "And I want to know if we can try something together." "I want to be with you," Noah confessed. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Alyssa felt her heart race as his words echoed in her mind. Before she could think, Noah stepped forward and kissed her gently. It was a kiss filled with sincerity and emotion. One that Alyssa returned. Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. She was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back without hesitation. When the kiss ended, she looked at him. Confused but also moved. Noah began to say something. He stopped. "I know we're from different worlds," he said quickly, as if trying to ease her worries. "But that doesn't mean we can't find a way." Alyssa looked away, struggling to organize her thoughts. "I want to believe that, Noah," she said. "But you're still thinking." Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. She was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back about buying the land. "You're still part of the problem we're facing." "I don't want to be the problem," he replied. His voice was heavy with sincerity. "But I need time to figure this out. It's not as simple as it seems." "Exactly," Alyssa said, stepping back. "Nothing about this is simple. I don't know if I can risk getting more involved with you while all of this is still happening. I don't want to get hurt, Noah, and I don't want my town to pay the price." Noah looked at her, his heart aching that he wanted to promise her that he would fix everything. He knew he couldn't make empty promises. Instead, he nodded slowly. "That I understand, Alyssa. I'm not giving up on you, not now. Not ever." She gave him a faint smile. Didn't respond. "Maybe we should." Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. She was initially hesitant. She eventually agreed. The two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back. "Head back to town," she said, changing the subject. Noah agreed, though reluctantly. The two walked back to the truck, each lost in their own thoughts. Alyssa spent the following days trying to ignore the whirlwind of emotions consuming her since Noah kissed her. She wanted to convince herself that life would return to normal. She knew that was impossible. Alyssa was starting to have strong feelings for Noah, even though she was still worried about some things. Noah, on the other hand, wanted to show Alyssa that he was more than the stressful work he was dealing with. He knew he needed to show that his feelings for her were real and that his ideas for Willow Springs were good. Alyssa was starting to have strong feelings for Noah. She was also worried. Noah wanted to show her that his feelings for her were real and that his ideas for Willow Springs were different from what she thought. To do that, he had to do something. A few days later, Noah went back to Willow Springs with a plan. He knew Alyssa would be busy at the general store. He decided to come without telling her he was coming. When she saw him walk in, she let out a deep sigh. "Noah, what are you doing here again?" she asked, trying to keep her cool. Noah's plan was to do things differently from what Alyssa had imagined. But to do so, he needed to act. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs with a plan. He knew Alyssa would be busy at the general store. He decided to show up unannounced. When she saw him walk in, she let out a deep sigh. "Noah, what are you doing here again?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. "I needed to talk," he replied. "And I thought it would be better to do it in person." Alyssa sat down the box she was carrying and crossed her arms, looking at him. "About what exactly?" she asked. "About the land," Noah said plainly. "And about us?" she raised an eyebrow. "Us?" Alyssa echoed. "I'm not sure there is an us." "I disagree," Noah replied calmly. "I think there is." "Even if you don't want to admit it," Alyssa opened her mouth to respond. Was interrupted by the sound of footsteps at the entrance. Richard walked into the store, stopping abruptly when he saw Noah. "Him again?" Richard asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Richard, this isn't a good time," Alyssa started. He ignored her. "Noah, Alyssa. This needs to be said, this guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town." Noah remained calm, his eyes fixed on Richard. "I do care. That's exactly why I'm here. Oh. Sure," Richard shot back sarcastically, "you care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have." "Noah, I'm not ignoring you." "Alyssa, I know. You need to do more than just talk." "Noah, this guy is here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town." Noah remained calm, his eyes fixed on Richard. "Richard, I do care. That's exactly why I'm here." "Noah, you care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have for a project that means nothing to you." "Noah, I'm not destroying anything. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone." "Richard, that's what you say now." "Richard, but we know how these things work. You'll do whatever's best for your company. That's the end of it." Alyssa, seeing that the argument was getting intense, was spiraling out of control, stepped in. "Enough. Both of you. I'm not a prize for you to fight over. My town isn't a battlefield." Noah looked at her, clearly regretful about the situation. "You're right. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying." Alyssa sighed, frustration evident. "I know. Noah. Trying isn't enough. You need to understand what this means to us." Richard looked at Noah one last time before leaving the store, leaving the two of them alone. Later that afternoon, Alyssa walked to the town square. Trying to clear her mind, she felt torn between her feelings for Noah and the reality of their very different lives not far away. Noah watched her from a distance. Noah ignored her. "Alyssa, this needs to be said. This guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town." Noah remained calm, his eyes fixed on Richard. "I do care. That's exactly why I'm here." "Oh. Sure." Richard shot back sarcastically. "You care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have." Distance reflecting on how he could earn her trust. Suddenly, a group of children ran past Alyssa, laughing as they splashed each other with improvised buckets of water. One of them tripped, spilling a bucket full of water directly onto Alyssa's feet, soaking her shoes. Just perfect, Alyssa exclaimed, trying not to laugh. As the kids, Noah apologized and ran off. Noah approached, struggling to hide a grin. I see your luck with water hasn't improved, he teased. Alyssa shook her head, trying to shake the excess water from her shoes. If you knew how many times this has happened, you wouldn't be surprised, she said. And yet you still manage to laugh about it, Noah said, impressed. That's what I do. There's not much I can control. I've learned to laugh when things go wrong, she replied. Unaware of how much that statement reflected her essence, Noah was silent for a moment before speaking again. You know, that's what I admire most about you. You handle everything with such grace that it makes me want to be like you. Noah ignored her. Alyssa, this needs to be said. This guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town. Noah remained calm, his eyes fixed on Richard. I do care. That's exactly why I'm here. Oh. Sure. Richard shot back sarcastically. You care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have. Different too. Alyssa looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Noah. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied, stepping closer. I just want you to know that I'm here. That I'm willing to change. Before she could respond, he gently took her hand. Alyssa, I know our worlds are different. I know there's still so much we need to figure out. I want you in my life. I want this to work. Alyssa looked at him, torn between emotion and fear. What if it doesn't? What if all of this is just a dream that falls apart when reality sets in? Then we'll figure it out together, he said without hesitation. She felt tears well up in her eyes. She refused to let them fall. That I need time. Noah, that I need to think about all of this. That he nodded, respecting her need for space. That I'll wait as long as it takes. Know this, for me, you're the right choice. Alyssa gave him a faint smile, didn't respond as she walked away, leaving Noah alone in the. Noah ignored her. Alyssa, this guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town. Noah remained calm, his eyes fixed on Richard. Richard, I do care. That's exactly why I'm here. Oh. Sure. Richard shot back sarcastically. You care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have. Square. The following days were a mix of silence and reflection for Alyssa. She avoided Noah. Not because she didn't care. Because she needed space to figure out what she truly wanted. Her insecurities about their different worlds still weighed heavily on her. The ongoing issue with the Willow Springs land only made things worse. Noah, I'm not ignoring her. Alyssa, I know. This guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town. Noah, I'm calm. I'm looking at Richard. I do care. That's exactly why I'm here. Oh. Sure. Richard shot back sarcastically. You care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have. Noah, on the other hand, decided that waiting passively wasn't enough. He knew he needed to show Alyssa, through his actions, that he was willing to change and that his feelings for her were real. As a first step, He instructed Blake to halt all land negotiations while he handled the situation personally. The next morning, Alyssa was busy reorganizing the store's inventory when she heard a car pull up outside. She looked out the window and saw Noah stepping out of the car with 2 bags full of something. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I came to help," he replied. "I don't know if you've noticed. Carrying bags of potatoes and organizing shelves isn't part of your job." She crossed her arms. "Today it is," Noah said, smiling. "And before you tell me I don't need to do this, let me remind you. You're the one who said I should understand how people hear." Alyssa laughed. Then she agreed. "Fine. Don't think I'll go easy on you." Noah started helping. He carried heavy boxes. Tried to organize products. Most of them ended up in the wrong spots. He even offered to help customers. However, his efforts were a mix of determination and disasters. At one point, Alyssa laughed out loud. Then she stopped. "Fine. Don't think I'll go easy on you." Noah started to help. He carried heavy boxes. Tried to organize products. Most of the products ended up in the wrong spots. He even offered to help customers. But he made a lot of mistakes. At one point, he dropped a bottle of tomato sauce, which shattered on the floor and spread red liquid everywhere. Alyssa couldn't hold back her laughter. "You're definitely not cut out for this, Noah." "Hey. At least I'm trying," he replied, grabbing a cloth to clean up the mess. Despite his embarrassment, he laughed along with her, realizing that Noah dropped a bottle of tomato sauce, shattering it on the floor and spreading the red liquid everywhere. Alyssa couldn't hold back her laughter. "You're definitely not cut out for this," she said. "Hey. At least I'm trying," Noah replied, grabbing a cloth to clean up the mess. Despite his embarrassment, he laughed along with her, realizing that even in the most awkward moments, being around Alyssa was unlike anything else. Meanwhile, rumors about the suspension of Phillips Enterprises land negotiations began circulating through the town. The residents were cautiously optimistic but also curious about what had changed. The news reached Richard, who wasted no time. He confronted Alyssa. "You're being manipulated," Richard said, showing up at the store. "You're manipulating how?" Alyssa asked, exhausted by his persistence. "He wants you to believe he cares. In the end, all of this is to gain your trust and move forward with his plan." "Richard. You don't know that," Alyssa replied. Tired. Noah's trying to change. "He even stopped the negotiations for now," Richard shot back, crossing his arms. "But what happens when he can't keep the investors happy anymore?" Alyssa didn't respond as much as she wanted to believe in Noah. Richard's words made her doubt. Noah noticed Alyssa's hesitation and decided he needed to do more. The next day, he invited her for a drive, initially reluctant. She agreed. Curious about what he had planned, Noah took her to the land his company had prioritized for the project. To her surprise, he began talking about preserving the community. "I know this might sound strange coming from me. I want you to. I'm trying to find a balance," he said, looking out at the landscape. My initial plan was to turn this into something big. Now I see the value it holds for you. I'm willing to rethink everything. Do you really think you can change all of this?" Alyssa asked, her tone a mix of hope and skepticism. "I have to try," Noah replied. "I'm doing this for you. Also because it's the right thing to do. Willow Springs deserves respect." Alyssa's heart wavered. Noah no longer seemed like the distant CEO she had met. He was someone willing to listen. Learn. Change still. Her insecurities lingered days later. Noah was back in Lakeview. Facing mounting pressure from his team and investors. The suspension of the Willow Springs negotiations had sparked questions and doubts about his leadership. He knew he was risking his reputation. He didn't care. Alyssa and everything she represented had become his priority the next day. Noah returned to Willow Springs with a plan. He knew even in the most awkward moments. Being around Alyssa was unlike anything else. Meanwhile, rumors about Phillips Enterprise suspending its land negotiations began circulating through the town. The residents were cautiously optimistic but also curious about what had changed. The news reached Richard, who wasted no time. He needed to act to show Alyssa he was committed. Not just to her. To the community as well. As soon as he arrived in town, he headed straight to the square, where he saw Alyssa talking with a group of residents. "Can we talk?" Noah asked, interrupting the conversation. Alyssa nodded, saying goodbye to the others, before following. Even in the most awkward moments, being around Alyssa was unlike anything else. Meanwhile, rumors about Phillips Enterprise suspending its land negotiations began circulating through the town. The residents were cautiously optimistic but also curious about what had changed. The news reached Richard, who went to a bench under a tree. He looked tense, as though he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I've made a decision," Noah began bluntly. "I cancelled the land project permanently." Alyssa blinked in surprise. "You did what?" he repeated. "I cancelled it. There won't be any construction or land purchases at Willow Springs." Even in the most awkward moments, being around Alyssa was unlike anything else. Meanwhile, rumors about the suspension of Phillips Enterprise's land negotiations began circulating through the town. The residents were cautiously optimistic but also curious about what had changed. The news reached Richard, who wasted no time. "I'll stay as it is." She stared at him, trying to process what this meant. "Why?" "Because you were right," Noah replied, his voice earnest. "This land is more than just property. It's the home of the people who live here. I can't be the person who destroys that." "But won't this cause problems for you? Your company?" Alyssa asked. Worried, "Yes. It will." He admitted, "But I'm willing to deal with the consequences. Some things are worth more than money or business." Alyssa felt her heart tighten. Noah was sacrificing for her. Willow Springs, and it made her realize that she might have underestimated him. Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type hamburger in the comments. Only those who may get this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. Despite Noah's decision, Alyssa was still unsure. That evening, as she walked alone through the quiet streets of town, she found Richard sitting on his porch. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. Richard gave a shrug, then pointed to the seat next to him. "Okay," Alyssa said. They sat in silence for a few minutes, looking at the stars. Finally, Richard spoke. "So, he really gave up the land?" Alyssa asked. "Yes," he replied. "He said he wants to do the right thing." "And do you believe him?" Richard asked, turning to look at her. Alyssa sighed. "I want to believe him. It's still hard." Richard was quiet for a moment before saying, "Maybe you should give him a chance. It seems like he's trying." She stared at him. "I'm surprised you're saying this after everything Richard did." Richard smiled. I just want you to be happy. Alyssa. I want you to be happy even if it means accepting that maybe Noah isn't the villain I thought he was. Alyssa didn't respond. Richard's words stayed with her as she walked home. In the days that followed, Noah began to involve himself more in the community. He helped repair a fence at the Clark farm. He participated in a local fundraiser to improve the town's school. He even learned to plant crops with the local farmers. Despite his initial clumsiness, he threw himself into each task with determination, slowly earning the trust of the townspeople. Alyssa watched all of this from a distance, still trying to process how a man who once seemed so far removed from her reality now felt like a part of it. Gradually, her walls began to come down. It was during one of the events in the town square that Alyssa finally approached Noah. He was helping serve food at a booth. When she walked up, she asked Noah for help. Do you need something? She asked. Smiling, Noah looked at her, surprised but pleased. They worked side by side, chatting and laughing at Noah's small mishaps. Like when he knocked over an entire tray of lemonade cups. Alyssa. It felt as though all her worries melted away. If only for that moment. When the event ended and the square began to empty, Noah asked Alyssa to take a walk. They headed to the lake, where the water mirrored the sky. The moon was bright. Alyssa and Noah started to stop near the shore. I know it took me a while to understand what was important. I want you to know that everything I've done has been for you because I believe in us. She looked at him. Her emotions were clear in her eyes. You're trying so hard, Noah. That means so much to me. I'm still afraid. I'm afraid that in the end, our worlds might just not be a good fit for each other. I understand, he said, taking her hands in his. I believe we can build something together, Alyssa. Something that works for us. I'm not giving up on you. She smiled softly, squeezing his hands. Maybe I need to stop being so afraid. Maybe, Noah replied with a smile. But until then, I'll keep proving to you that this is worth it. As Noah and Alyssa began finding their rhythm in their newly discovered relationship, a storm loomed on the horizon. Not in the skies over Willow Springs. In Noah's corporate world, his decision to cancel the land project. He had upset investors. Rumors that he was focusing on his personal life started spreading among the company's board members. That morning, Noah was in his office in Lakeview, preparing for a virtual board meeting. The faces on the screen looked serious and restless. Phillips. We need answers. One of the senior investors said angrily. You stopped a profitable project. Fired part of the team. Haven't come up with a new plan yet. Plan, we're starting to lose confidence in the company's direction. Another director added. Equally stern, we want to know what your priorities are. Noah took a deep breath, holding back his frustration. He had expected this reaction. The pressure was overwhelming. My priority is to find solutions that benefit both the company and the communities involved. He replied firmly. Benefit communities, one of the directors scoffed with a sarcastic laugh. Phillips Enterprises is $1 billion. Noah clenched his fists under the table. He kept his composure. We're not giving up on the project. We're making some changes to make sure it's more sustainable and respectful to the local community. That sounds more like an excuse than a plan. Another director said, shaking his head. Perhaps your personal priorities are getting in the way of what we're trying to do. Noah was worried that his choices were affecting business decisions. He felt pressure because he had to make important decisions. Noah chose Alyssa and Willow Springs, which meant he could lose his job. But he also knew he couldn't change his mind. "I'll present a new plan soon," he said, ending the discussion. "I trust you'll judge it based on the results." Back in Willow Springs, Alyssa was worried. Noah had done so much for her and the town. She felt like everything could fall apart. She worried that he might have to choose between her and his company. That she wouldn't be the choice he made. The grandmother saw that her granddaughter was restless. She sat next to her on the porch of the general store and asked, "What's on your mind, dear?" "It's Noah," Alyssa said, staring into the horizon. "He's trying. He's done so much for me and the town. But I can't shake the feeling that all of this could fall apart." Her grandmother smiled with compassion. "Alyssa is wise. Love isn't about guarantees, it's about choices. From what I see, Noah is choosing you every single day. What if one day he can't choose me?" Alyssa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then you'll have to trust that he did everything he could. In the meantime, maybe it's time for you to choose, too," her grandmother said, holding her hand. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs, determined to spend time with Alyssa. Before facing the mounting pressure in Lakeview, he spent some time with Alyssa. He found her at the general store, distracted as she arranged the shelves. He asked her a question, leaning against the counter. "Shouldn't you be in the big city dealing with your furious investors?" he asked. "Probably," Alyssa replied, smiling. "But I'd rather be here," he said. Alyssa finally looked at him, noticing the exhaustion. "Noah felt like they were putting a lot of pressure on you, didn't they?" "Yes," he admitted. "But I'm not going to let that change my priorities." "What if they don't accept it?" Alyssa asked, her voice full of concern. "What if you lose everything?" Noah stepped closer and took her hands in his. "Then I'd lose it. I'd rather lose that than lose you." His words hit her like a wave. Before she could respond, he continued, "Alyssa, I'm not going to lie to you. This won't be easy. I'm willing to face whatever comes because you're worth it." She remained silent, fighting back tears. "I want to believe that," Noah said. "I want to believe we can make this work." "Then believe it," he said with a gentle smile. "Because I'm not giving up." That evening, Noah invited her to a simple dinner in a small clearing near the lake. He had prepared everything. A blanket on the ground, a picnic basket, a light strung in the trees. Alyssa was surprised at how much effort he had put into it. "You did all this?" she asked, laughing. "I did," he replied, a proud glint in his eyes. "I hope it's good enough to rival the general store." "It definitely is," she said, sitting down beside him. They spent hours talking, laughing, sharing stories from their vastly different lives. The first time, Alyssa felt that maybe it was possible to find balance between their two worlds. When the evening came to an end, Noah walked her back to the store's entrance. Before saying goodbye, he looked into her eyes and said, "I know the future is uncertain. I promise I'm with you, no matter what happens." Alyssa smiled, finally allowing herself to believe, "I'm with you, too, Noah. No matter what happens." The next day, Noah He returned to Lakeview feeling ready to face his toughest battle yet. The company's board had called an emergency meeting. He could feel they were ready to demand more definite answers. As he prepared his arguments, thoughts of Alyssa helped him stay focused. He needed to find a way to balance protecting the company and keeping his promise to her. The meeting was tense. From the beginning, the serious looks around the table showed that the board was losing patience. Phillips, a senior member, started leaning forward. Your decision to stop the land project has cost us millions in possible investments. Shareholders are wondering if you're still committed to the company's growth. And for good reason. Another member jumped in. You've been talking about a more community. Noah was serious. That's not what makes money. This company can't be guided by feelings. Noah stayed calm. Even though it was hard to stay calm. He knew he couldn't make everyone happy. He also knew he needed to be sure about what he was doing. I understand your concerns, Noah began. His voice firm. I know my recent decisions have been strange. I want to make it clear that I am committed to the success of Phillips Enterprises. However, I believe we can achieve that success without hurting the values of the communities we impact. The board, the members looked at each other and seemed doubtful. One of them said, "You need to be more specific. What exactly are you proposing?" Noah answered, "I'm suggesting that we completely change our strategy. Instead of making big purchases that people don't like, we will work with communities to build things that last and help everyone, including the people living there and the investors." Everyone in the room became quiet for a moment. Then one of the most important board members spoke. "This idea is risky. It could take years to make money. It's worth it?" Noah answered right away. Because building trust, not destroying it, is the key to success. While some members were still hesitant, others started thinking about the idea. After talking about it for a long time, the meeting ended with a promise to make a final decision soon. In Willow Springs, Alyssa was slowly coming to terms with the idea that Noah was really changing. The townspeople started noticing the good effects of his actions. Even Richard, who had been his harshest critic, started to feel more kindly toward him. "Maybe he's not as bad as I thought," Richard admitted one afternoon while helping Alyssa unload supplies at the general store. "That's about as close to a compliment as you've ever given me," Alyssa teased with a smile. Richard gave a little shrug and a faint smile. "I just hope he's ready for what's ahead. If he messes this up, I won't let him off so easily." Alyssa laughed, knowing Richard was only trying to protect her. Still, the first time, she felt he was accepting her choice. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs. Time with good news that he found Alyssa at the general store, busy helping customers. Waited patiently until she was free. "You look pretty pleased with yourself," she said, noticing him leaning against the counter with a smile. "And I am," he replied. "The board approved my proposal that we're changing the company's strategy." Alyssa raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You convinced them?" "It was a fight," he admitted. "Yes. We did it. Willow Springs will be the model for the company's new direction. Nothing will be done without the community's approval." She smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Noah. That's amazing. It's just the beginning," he said. He took her hands in his. "All of this was possible because of you, Alyssa. You made me see things differently." She felt tears well up in her eyes. She tried to hide them. "I didn't do anything. You did this yourself. No. Alyssa. You did more than you realize. Later. Noah sat on the general store's porch, waiting for Alyssa to finish closing. Taking her hands in his, Noah said, "All of this was possible because of you. Alyssa. You made me see things differently." She felt tears well up in her eyes but tried to hide them. "I didn't do anything. You did this yourself." "No. Alyssa. You did more than you realize." Later. Noah sat on the general store's porch, waiting for Alyssa to finish closing up. Up after another day of work. The sunset painted the Willow Springs sky in golden hues. Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her after another day of work. The sunset painted the sky at Willow Springs in golden hues. Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her hands on her apron, she noticed the nervousness in his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, tilting her head. "I am," he said, smiling softly. "In fact, I've never been better." Before she could ask anything else, he stood up, taking her hands in his. "Alyssa. I've thought a lot about everything we've been through, the differences, the challenges. How, after a long day of work, the sky at sunset was filled with golden light. Noah felt that now was the perfect time to ask Alyssa to marry him. Since he had convinced the board to change the company's strategy, he had a clear vision for the future. This included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her. "Much of our lives have changed since we met. One thing has never changed, my desire to be with you." Alyssa's heart raced as Noah knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it, revealing a simple yet stunning ring, elegant in a way that seemed made just for her. "Alyssa Collins. You are the reason I'm a better person." After a long day of work, the sunset painted the sky at Willow Springs in golden hues. Noah felt that the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her. "Man. Today you've taught me what truly matters and shown me that love is worth every risk. I want to spend every day by your side. Learning. Laughing. Building something incredible together. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Alyssa's eyes. She couldn't contain the smile spreading across her face. "Noah, of course I will," she said, after another day of work. The sunset painted the sky in golden hues. Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her tears, her voice filled with emotion as he slid the ring onto her finger. Noah stood, pulling her into a tight embrace before kissing her under the soft glow of the setting sun. In that moment, all of Alyssa's doubts and fears melted away. Their love hadn't just overcome the barriers between them, it had transformed them into a foundation. After a long day of work, the sky at sunset was filled with golden light. Noah felt that the timing was perfect for his plan. since he had convinced the company's leaders to change their strategy. He had a clear vision for the future. This vision included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her. Something even greater. In the days that followed, the news of the engagement spread quickly throughout Willow Springs. The townspeople, who had initially been wary of Noah, now saw him as an ally and celebrated with great enthusiasm. Alyssa's grandmother, in particular, could not hide her joy. "I always knew he had something special," she told anyone who would listen. Her eyes sparkling with pride. To celebrate Noah's success at the company and their engagement, he and Alyssa planned a party in the town square. Lights were strung in the trees. Tables were set with homemade food from the locals. A small band was invited to play lively music as night fell. The square buzzed with joy. Children ran between the tables, while adults chatted and laughed. Noah, helping serve food, looked completely at ease from across the square. Alyssa watched him, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. The party was in full swing when Noah stepped onto a small, makeshift stage to give a speech. He held a microphone. Beside him stood Alyssa with her grandmother holding her hand. "I want to thank all of you for being here tonight," Noah began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I first came to Willow Springs, I'll admit I didn't understand the value of this place. But Alyssa and each one of you showed me what truly matters. Community, love, respect." The square erupted in applause. Noah raised his hand to continue. "Tonight, we're not just celebrating the new direction of the company, we're celebrating the strength of this town and the incredible people who make it so special." He turned to Alyssa, his eyes shining. "And I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Alyssa, being there for me after work." The sunset painted the sky in golden hues. Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her moment to say that "This woman by my side has changed my life. She's the reason I'm here. Not just today. Forever." Alyssa felt tears streaming down her face as Noah leaned in to kiss her. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Her grandmother beamed, pulling both of them into a warm embrace. The celebration continued. After work, the sunset painted the sky in golden colors. Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear. That future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him late into the night, they filled it with laughter, dancing, memories that no one in Willow Springs would ever forget. Alyssa. It was more than just a party. It was confirmation that their two worlds, despite their differences, had found a way to coexist. As the lights twinkled softly in the trees and the band played their final song, Alyssa and Noah stood next to each other, watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the moment. "Do you think we made it?" she asked softly. "I know we did," Noah replied, taking her hand. "And I can't wait to see what else we can build together." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Under the stars of Willow Springs, Noah and Alyssa began a new chapter in their lives, proving that love and determination could overcome any difference when both were willing to fight for the same dream. What did you think of Noah and Alyssa's story? Share your opinion in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. and take a moment to watch more heartwarming stories by clicking here on the end screen.